Welcome to the board wrap-up for December 2013. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and Happy Holidays to everybody as we begin the last couple of weeks before the semester break and the Christmas holiday break. Ponca City Board of Education met for their December board meeting. We've got Superintendent Pennington to discuss a few things as we hit the end of the first semester and get ready for January. The board meeting took on a bit of a different tone, Dr. Pennington, on Monday night with the recent passing of one of our board members. And I know there's a sadness, but also a lot of questions about that board position. I thought we might take some time to discuss that.
What we will do, and we talked about this last night, is that starting this week, you'll see some advertisements and some letters or some articles in the Ponca City News trying to let the public know that we have an opening, and that opening, our hope is that we will advertise and that individuals will apply for that job. They have between now and January 8th to complete an application, and then on the January 13th board meeting, from 5 to 6 before the meeting begins, we have time set aside to interview prospective candidates for that position, and hopefully the night of January 13th we will select someone to fill that term, or at least we'll fill the next year of that term. What happens is because there's more than 2.5 years left in that term of office, the individual that is appointed by the board will serve until the next election. So they'll be appointed, and then next December 2014, they'll have the opportunity, along with anybody else from Ward 5, to file for that position, and then that will be a part of the annual school election that takes place in February. Now, it could be that the individual we appoint is the only person interested, and when they file next December, no one runs against them. That happened with David Kincaid, who is our incumbent member for Ward 4. He did not draw an opponent, and David will serve on the Ponca City Board of Education for another 5 years. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. You know, it makes it difficult. People sometimes are willing to serve in a seat, but they really don't want to run for election. And so we'll have to see what happens with that.
Discussing, of course, the death of Dr. Hartman, who was on the board. He wasn't on the board very long, so you know, it's extenuating circumstances, and I don't know whether you've ever had that happen or not. Are the circumstances different when a board member passes away than they are if a board member moves or is dismissed from the board?
No, when that vacancy occurs, regardless of the reason, the rules are the same. And what the law says is that if it's the same, no matter what it is, if there's 2.5 years, if there's less than 2.5 years left on the term, then whoever the board appoints serves for the remainder of that time. If there's more than 2.5 years left, then the board makes an appointment, and then that individual, if they want to continue to serve on the board, has to file and run as a candidate in the next election. So that just, you know, which is ironic, because by the time they file, there will only be 2 years left, because that term expires in 2017. So that's where we are. We will, and hopefully we'll have some applicants. Basically, Ward 5 is the Lincoln attendance zone. Of course, none of our board wards are complete squares. I mean, they all have jigs and jags. But basically, what Ward 5 does is if you think about First Street, and First Street is the eastern boundary until you get to, I think it's Osage, and it jogs over on Osage all the way up to Hartford, and then it goes out Hartford, and it goes west all the way to the western boundary of the district, which is, there's actually a road between R Street and S Street. There's a little county road out there, and that is the dividing line between us and Tonkawa to the west. It goes down and goes south of Highway 60 all the way to the Deep Fork or Salt Fork, whatever the county boundary line is, and then it comes up, and it actually there's a small section of the area south of South Avenue to Wilson Avenue that is in District 4, but everything south of South Avenue is in District 5. So basically, Ranch Drive, the White Eagle reservation area, those areas are in Ward 5, and then everything that's west of Highland and Hartford, that's all in Ward 5. So it's a pretty big area, but it is an area that we traditionally have had a difficult time finding somebody to be interested in running for the board. So we'll see what happens. I think what makes board membership hard, the biggest issue I think for people, is that they think that, well, I'm not an educator, or I don't know anything about schools, and really you don't have to know a lot. We just are, because the day-to-day operation of the school district is conducted by district administration, and so we need board members to obviously to make policy, to help us make policy. We just need folks with good common sense and individuals that are interested in kids. And it's all about, from my perspective as a superintendent, other people may have different opinions, but we need board members who want to do what's best for kids and create the best environment for the children of this community. And the nuts and bolts of board membership, the School Board Association does great training for board members, and then administratively in this district, we can train you on the duties and responsibilities of a board member, and so it's all about serving kids. What it's not about firing teachers. It's not about firing coaches, because as a board member, you only get to do that if the administration makes a recommendation to you. So you're not going to fire a teacher unless I recommend that. You're not going to fire a coach unless I recommend that. So obviously we don't need people who that's their only agenda. You need to be broad-based, has to be interested in kids. And what would be great, what I hope to have out of this, is I would like to have somebody who would serve on our board who has children in the school system. Right now we have board members who have grandchildren in the system, but we don't have a board member who actually has children in the system. And so, I think that is something that needs to be a part of that mix. Obviously, the board represents the entire community. It represents our senior citizens, and it represents our businesses, and it represents our grandparents and our parents. But I think we're lacking because we don't have somebody that has a child in the system on our board. So I think it would be great if we had an applicant who had a child. You can't have a family member within the second degree. So people go, what's the second degree? Basically, if you think about mom, dad, children, grandchildren, brothers and sisters, stepbrothers, stepsisters, and in-laws, that's second degree. So you can have an aunt or uncle who works for the school district. You can have a cousin that works for the school district, but you can't have somebody that's in that close relationship. And we have a lot, because we have a lot of employees. We have lots of people who'd be interested in serving on the board, but they've got a family member who works for the district. So, and then you have to be a registered voter for at least 6 months. You have to have lived in the district for at least 6 months. So those are the basic requirements. Other than that, you have to have a high school diploma or an equivalent certification. So, but other than that, there's really not a whole lot of qualifications to serve on the board.
It's Ward 5, and again, you'll be seeing information about that. If you have any questions, you can also certainly contact our Board of Education about where you live and if you are in Ward 5.
And we have a link on our website, so you can click on the Ward 5 map and you can blow that up, and you can look and see exactly where you live and see whether or not you're in that. Obviously, we're more than glad to answer any questions anybody has.
If you follow our Board of Education meetings closely, which some people do, not a lot, you may not know how moving forward our Ponca City schools are, but we have a lot of things going on moving forward. You see some construction, even though it's the dead of winter, you see some construction going on. And I know that in the December board meeting, Dr. Pennington, the building that we actually sit in right now, I don't know how much longer it's going to be your office, but there are plans to change our central business office for our Board of Education.
Yeah, our plan is, and actually we'll be starting that pretty quick, renovating the administration building that's across from East Middle School. And hopefully by this time next year, we'll be in those offices. Obviously, that it's a major project, I've had, sometimes people will ask, well, why are you doing that? What's wrong with your building now? And there's not anything wrong with this facility, except if you try to have a meeting when the train's going by, and it seems to be that in the last couple of years there's been an increase in train traffic, and we don't hear it here anymore because we've soundproofed this room, but there are times we have to stop what we're doing when we're having meetings, trainings, and those kinds of things. We have for the train to go by, and that's not a good professional environment. But we made the decision, the board did, 4 or 5 years ago, that we were going to renovate the East, what we call right now the East Administration Building. And I think there were, and that was not a decision that was taken lightly. We found ourselves with a building that was empty, we had some choices. The first choice would have been to tear the building down. Okay. The second choice would have been to sell the building. We did have some interest. The people that we had talked to about the building, no one was going to pay us what the building was worth, because the building does have value. There's a lot of square footage there, and it is well built. So we could either sell it to somebody else, and they would have turned it into an office space, and then we would have been asking questions: why did you sell that building for such a small amount of money and let somebody else turn it into office space? Or we could turn it back into office space for us. And so that's what we decided to do. I think there were a couple of things that drove that decision. One, it is the historical place for the administration to be. We've been in this building for over 20 years, but I think that the reason for that is the building had gotten to be it just wasn't in good shape, and rather than spending the money necessary to renovate that building, they decided to come down here and renovate this, and they got a really good deal on this building. The other thing is that we need additional space for a couple other departments, primarily our child nutrition area, which is over by the bus barn, and their facilities are poor, is the way I would describe them. And so we need to create better space for them, and so we can't do that on that site, and so it makes sense to move them someplace else, and this is the most logical place to move them. We can't move them till we get this building vacated. So the project is going to be probably in the neighborhood of $3.5 million. I'm trying to think of what year it was. I think it was the 2009 bond issue. The voters approved $1 million to go toward the renovation of East Middle School, or the East Administration Building. We have some dollars left over from that not the bond issue we passed not the 2012, not the 2013 bond issue, but the one we passed before then. We've completed projects, and we have some dollars available that we'll put into that project, and then we're going to use some building fund dollars to finish that out. Administration space is one of those areas that people will, you don't have kids there, and that's true, but we serve kids. We do a lot of training for our teachers, so we'll use the space for that. And at the end of the day, this is a decision that's going to, the administration building offices will be down there for after we get this done, the next 50 to 100 years. They're not going to move again. And so it's one of those things that, people can always question decisions you make, but at the end of the day, I think it's in the long-term best interest of the school district for us to do that, and it will serve the community, and it allows us a chance to reclaim a building that really is one of the best-looking buildings in Ponca City. If you think about downtown, it's one of the best-looking buildings down there, and we'll be able to put it to use again. And I think at the end of the day, it's a good thing for us to do.
It looks like a school building. It's right next to the library. It's right across the street from East. But for those that still are fuzzy about what we're talking about, I go back to the 80s, and it is the administration building that we used in the '80s for everything, and
Right.
I can remember when we had an 11-member board, I believe, Dr. Pennington, and we would all pack in that room. You could do it now with your 5-member board,
Right.
but back in the day, with 11 members in that boardroom, those were quite interesting days, and I'm sure you've heard about those too.
It's a historical significant building. I think it was built in 1922. There was an addition added that actually added classroom space to it. We don't have any intention of bringing students back over there for classrooms. Obviously, we'll take that area. We're not going to renovate the whole building right now, but we anticipate that we will be adding instructional space, conference rooms, those kinds of things. We think it's going to be a good building, and it's big enough that we can offer some space to the community for meetings and those kinds of things.
Right.
So we think it's a good deal, and I think it's kind of back to revitalizing, restoring the downtown area of Ponca City, and so we think it's an important thing to do. And at the end of the day, we just thought we saw it as our building, and we didn't see any reason that we would sell that to somebody else, and I think it would have been a big mistake to tear it down.
I wanted you to visit a little bit about your comments on Native American students. I know that at the board meeting in December, there was some discussion about what Ponca City does. I think the perception is that we have maybe a greater percentage of students than a lot of schools because of our Native American heritage in Ponca City. Is that true? And you might discuss that a bit.
Well, our Native American population is about 17% of our student body, and so it is our largest minority group. Of course, because of the number of Native Americans in Oklahoma, there are going to be other districts that have more Native Americans than we do. What we did yesterday was kind of report on Chris Littlecook, who is our director of our Title, I think it's Title IX program, which is our Native American program. Talked to the board about that program, and he kind of focused and he focuses on something different every board meeting, every time he comes to the board. And yesterday his focus was on the participation rates of Native American students in extracurricular programs. And what Chris reported to the board is something that anybody who attends our extracurricular activities knows, that our Native American students are well represented on our football teams, our basketball teams, wrestling, cheerleading, high steppers, band, orchestra. Our Native American students participate in those at the same levels that other students do. For us, we don't think about that. But in some places around the country, that's not true. In some places in the country, Native American students don't participate in those activities. And obviously, we're not as, you'd always like to be better integrated. You would like to, whether it's Hispanic students or black students, Native American students or poor students, whatever it is, you'd like your student body to be integrated into such a way that you don't even think about those designations. We're probably better in that area than we were 25 years ago. We're definitely better than we were in the 70s and early 80s. But we still are not, where we want to be, and we strive to make that happen. The purpose of last night's meeting was to give parents an opportunity, if they had anything, to get up and voice their opinions about the program. And we had a parent that addressed the board last night, and that parent addressed several issues. One of the things that he asked the board to consider, one of the things he thought was lacking was that we don't have a Native American club at the high school. And while our Native American students participate in all the other clubs that we have at the high school, and I think that is something I know that I had not thought about, and I'll get with our high school principal, Kent Marshall, and Mr. Littlecook, and we'll discuss that. We can have a Native American club without that being, we just have to have a high school teacher who's willing to sponsor that. It could be Mr. Littlecook, it could be somebody else. So we had that discussion, and I think that would be something that we'll look and see what other schools are doing, and obviously there's no harm in that. So I think it would be something that maybe people want to see what's a change the next year. We may this time next year we have a Native American club, and so I think that'd be a good thing.
Absolutely. before we end our show, anything else you wanted to talk to your viewers about before we say Merry Christmas?
Well, obviously, we just want everybody to have a great break, and I think we're I guess a little bit more than a week away from being out for Christmas, and we want everybody to have a great break and a safe break and enjoy their time. Obviously, today was a day that you got out in the morning and there's some snow on the ground, and I would just remind our viewers that obviously we always want to have school if at all possible. I know that's not what the kids want. The kids are looking for every reason not to be in school, and I'm looking for every reason to be in school. So we were up this morning at 4 o'clock driving, and I think we discovered what I heard you say on the radio this morning, that once you got out of the neighborhoods, the main streets were pretty clear, and so we're going to have school in that situation. But also always remind parents that there will be days that the weather is more difficult than this. We have to make our decision early. And sometimes when we make a decision at 5:30 in the morning, things are different at 8:30. Obviously, weather forecasting has gotten better, and so we rely upon that now more than we used to. But it's not unusual for a parent or grandparent or other guardian to disagree with the decision the school's made in having school that day, and you absolutely have a right to do that. If you think it's too dangerous, then don't send your child to school. We respect that, but the child will have to make up their work, and they will be counted absent because that's what state law requires. We don't have the opportunity to waive that. So obviously, you need to make the decision that you think is best for your family, and we're not going to disagree with that. Now, if they've missed 9 days before, and that's the 10th day they've missed, and the law kicks in that says if you've got 10 consecutive days of absence, there's procedures that have to step in. Well, then those procedures are going to step in. But and obviously we hope that parents are always mindful of the conditions outside, because I think this is going to be a cold winter, and so we need to make sure that kids have enough layers to go out and go on to school. I think it's ironic with the weather. I've noticed over the years we always, no matter how bad the weather is, we do what we want to do, and it was pretty miserable last Saturday, but we had 58,000 people sitting in Boone Pickens Stadium to watch a football game. The weather's we can always do what we want to do, and so we have to keep that in mind. And the bottom line is we're going to try to have school if at all possible.
To you and your family, have a great holiday, and to everybody out there, we hope you have a safe holiday as well. To Chris Adams, who's behind the scenes always, Merry Christmas to Chris and his new wife, and we'll see you in January.
In 2014.
In 2014.
Kind of hard to imagine.
It is. Dr. Pennington, Phil Turney, have a great holiday.